heating and things going on, boilers and things like that are being fixed. Those are the types of projects that the capital fund takes care of. You made mention of the operational fund. So that's the second pot, if you will, of funds that school districts operate from. So from the operational fund, there comes your things such as teacher salaries and things, which is something that we're going to utilize those funds for. Is the first million will go to teacher raises. The teachers in Gary Community School Corporation haven't had a raise in the last 10, 12 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Henderson from HR, but it's been about 10 or 12 years. So the referendum, she said about 12 years. So the referendum will cover things such as teacher raises, extracurricular opportunities, rigorous instruction, things like that for our school corporation.
Does anyone else, I mean, I think that was a great overview, but if there's anything else that anyone else wants to add to that?
Yes, if I may, the referendum will also help us with making 3 of our schools STEM academies. It will also help us have activities that we used to have, such as Spell Bowl, Science Bowl. Those extracurriculars we have not been able to have as of late due to the financial constraints of the district.
So I wanted to save this particular part of the conversation later, but I think because I cannot get on Facebook to engage, we're just going to go with the flow. So I'm going to do this. So there is a piece of conversation within the community that just touched on to something that you just said, Ms. Henderson. So you stated that, you know, one of the pieces is to possibly bring on 3 STEM academies. And I don't want to gloss over that, because a large part of the conversation is we understand that this supporting, you know, the increases for staff and teachers raises, which is a great thing. My background outside of the council is more on the corporate side. And let me tell you, I get a year-over-year raise based on performance, 20% to be exact. So I understand what the changes in cost of living, et cetera, and the motivation, your motivation to deal with a lot of the additional factors that come up, you know, in that particular industry, in the education industry, warrants more than just a 12-year, you know, every 12-year raise, if you will. But a lot of people do not have the trust in the Gary Community School System. And that's just being straight up. And I did share that with Dr. Page last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, when we had our committee meeting on the council, excuse me. And I think a large part of that is what we're trying to do right here, because there's a lack of informed, and people get their information on Facebook. So that's why we're trying to utilize this platform to give the facts, right? Or people get their information from a paper and don't understand that a paper is the opinion of the person who, you know, wrote the article. And they sometimes put in facts, but it's how they interpret those facts, right? That is communicated. And so in addition to that, the lack of communication, the lack of understanding, you know, how to interpret the facts and where to receive the actual information, they believe that the curriculum, even before we even got to this point 3 years ago for a takeover, the curriculum was struggling. And so I want to go in a little bit deeper in terms of the STEM academies, because that is a piece of that is addressing the curriculum aspect of it. Not fully, right? But I think that, in my opinion, and again, you know, you all are definitely the experts, but if I was assessing a school system, and I know in terms of what the push is in industry and what our counterparts are doing in their other communities, I think Hammond has a strong, you know, STEM program at one of their schools that was actually turned into a STEM school, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so the push is for our engineers, our push is for us to have more coding, you know, in terms of opportunities for these students once they leave the Gary Community School System. So if you all can talk about that, the importance in terms of what portion of the funding will be allocated to curriculum changes. And if it's not the referendum portion, because I know that's specific to infrastructure, just let me know. I know that there's some things that was talked about briefly in the path forward plan that was more so objectives. So I think it's important for us to talk about those objectives outside of the referendum that also will have the opportunity to be addressed related to curriculum, if in fact this is passed. long segue, but you get what I'm saying. We gotta, you gotta get it in. So curriculum, the fact that even before we got to the funding issue, the debt issue, that people felt like the curriculum in the school system was struggling. So the assessment is, okay, if I pay as a property owner, to help debt, to help capital improvements, to put in extracurricular activities, which is nice. But if you're struggling on the curriculum side, how are you remaining competitive, period, right? So if you all, anyone would like to take that, and I think that might be a good conversation piece as well.
Yes, indeed. And feel free to chime in, principals, Ms. Henderson, as well. So you mentioned the path forward, our 2-year plan that we have. And one of those areas, aside from academics is our focus, engagement, the fiscal, and then also operations. So we know, and you hit right on that the top 50 careers offhand are basically engineer focused. So we have to start pushing our students in that direction so that they can be competitive with the rest of the world, so that they can get out there, compete, and get the jobs and make a living for themselves. Our CTE program is going to be heading in that direction as well. We've added on some programs to CTE this year, one of them being aviation, to ensure that our students are able to be competitive in that area as well. So it's super important that we focus on increasing the rigor of our academics, just as the state has done with our state standards. So we have to be able to have the supplemental materials to ensure that our students receive that quality instruction. And I also want to speak to, if you don't mind, Councilwoman Taya, I also want to speak to when you made mention of the teacher raises. I want to talk a little bit why that's crucial. It's crucial simply because.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Could you explain CTE? Because you just mentioned that, and then
yes,
can you also state if the CTE program is only for high school students, or is it offered at your middle school levels, etc.?
So our CTE program is our career and technical education program. It's one of our pathways to be able to earn a high school diploma. Over this past summer, we did offer a course to our 8th grade students as a summer course. It was called Preparing for College and Careers, to get them ready to go to high school, almost like a bridgeway for them, so that they know what's coming. So when you get to high school, it's not the first time that you hear about these things. So we're preparing them. So that's what CTE is. It's our Geary Area Career Center is where that programming is held. You had one other question. What was it?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in addition to that, I believe I was talking about the teacher raises. We want to have for our students highly qualified educators. And the best way to do that is to be able to be competitive with the surrounding districts. And I know this is your area, Ms. Henderson, but to be competitive with the surrounding districts. Our teachers haven't had a raise in years. So oftentimes what you'll see is when teachers graduate from college and they're ready to look for a job, they're going to the surrounding districts because they're paying more. So this will give us an opportunity to be able to compete with the surrounding districts so that we can obtain some of those highly qualified staff members for our students as well.
So if I can add to the teacher scenario that Kershell is speaking of, because they haven't had a raise in 20 years, we have not been able to utilize the teacher salary schedule. And in that teacher salary schedule, teachers would get a bump based on years of service, and they would also get a bump based on their educational attainment. So as we're hiring in new teachers, we have a minimum that we can pay because they haven't had a raise in 12 years. So a teacher coming to Geary Schools, regardless to whether you're a first-year teacher or you're a 10-year experienced teacher, the amount is still the same. So that starting rate is $40,500. So if we want qualified teachers who have experience, we cannot get them at $40,500 because they can go up the street and get the amount that goes along with their experience with their educational attainment. And the max we can give to a new teacher is $45,500. And so we always lose out in this area because we're trying to get those seasoned teachers, especially when we're trying to get math and science teachers. They look at us and say, I'm not coming there for 45.5, which is the most that we can offer them because our teachers have not had a raise in 12 years. So it makes it very difficult for us to put qualified teachers in front of our students because we can't compete with our surrounding school corporations. So giving the teachers this raise will help us utilize that salary schedule. So as we're attracting new teachers, we can have better offers for them and give them a reason to actually come to Gary Schools and bring some of the experience that they have, and they can help grow our programs because we have more talent housed in our district.
Very good. I would like to get some engagement from some of the leaders of the schools. So if any of the principals would like to kind of engage, I think that if you can just, let's talk about your prospect in terms of curriculum changes. I think you all might have directly seen effects possibly related to a decrease in the retention rate with the competitive schools actually having some of the points that Ms. Hobson and then Mrs. Henderson actually spoke of, more competitive rates. So possibly a decline in your staffing at the actual schools itself. Possibly as a parent, you know, parents may have removed their children based off of other competitive initiatives. So I just want to kind of get your feedback in terms of, other than the salary aspect, what is the other benefits that you feel that you can speak to, like the parent, in terms of why they should support the referendum?
Well, when we think about what makes teachers want to come to this district, we talked about the compensation, but I think we also need to refer or think about the retention. What is going to make a teacher stay? When we have the funds to put into teacher preparation, the training that goes along with what is going to build the capacity of the teacher, what is going to make a strong teacher, because the capacity of the teacher is going to have the direct impact on how well the student is going to do. So not only are we investing, is this referendum going to allow us to invest in the future of our students, but it's also going to allow us to invest in our teachers. When we think about what makes them stay, again, what I do within our class, and I'm sure the other principals will say as well, we talk to our teachers about setting goals. We provide our teachers with the training. This is one of the first years in many years where we've actually had the opportunity to place teachers, giving them training, not only in just the curriculum, but we're talking about cultural competencies, things that will relate to students' social emotional learning. Those things that before we can get to the academics, there's some foundation there that we need to relate to students. We're talking about rigor, relevance, relationships. All of those things are important when we talk about what's going to help our students be competitive in the 21st century beyond, okay? So I would just say we are on the right track. What's on the ballot this year is the future of Gary students, the future of our teachers, because I think everybody can think about the impact or what has changed the trajectory of your lives, right? There's always been some adult, whether it was a coach, a mentor, or a teacher. Teachers are so vital right now. And in this virtual world, okay, it's different, it's difficult, but they're doing a tremendous job of building those relationships, of supporting the students, the families, and the more we can do to invest in our teachers, in our students, again, it's the future. The future is on the ballot this year.
Principal Bradley, did you want to add anything?
Just going to talk about the STEM part of it. With my background in science and understanding how STEM is so necessary for our students, regardless of the career track that they take in life. Because what STEM does, it provides an opportunity for students to do more critical thinking. They have some more intrinsic learning, and they set their own growth mindset, which is so important for our young people today. So in having STEM education going on with our students, it gives us the opportunity to direct them in the path that they want to go. They figure it out. They're exploring when they take STEM education. They have problem-solving lessons when they do STEM education. So supporting this referendum would bring more of that into the district, which will make our students competitive in the 21st century and beyond. So it's definitely a need, and it's something that I work with my teachers and my students with every day. We have some talented teachers. We want them to stay. So being able to keep them in this district is also very important to us, especially when we talk about STEM education.
And I'm gonna pull Principal Kinsey in as well.
Yeah, so just to, kind of reiterate the same messages, is just, I think about, as Ms. Golston said, I'm a graduate of Banneker Elementary, Tolliston Middle School, and Westside Leadership Academy. And throughout that time that I spent in those schools, reading, writing, and arithmetic were very important. But the things that I remember most are the Spanish club, the art club, radio and TV, all of the things that have been kind of stripped away from our students. So those things, and they're not just stripped from the students, they're stripped from the teachers. The teachers have passions outside of, just their teaching. They love teaching, and we see that on display every day. But you have teachers who are photographers, gardeners, artists, and they do not get to pour those things into the children. And so our kids are missing out. When you look at these other districts, you can compare their course catalogs straight right online and see the offerings that other schools have that we just don't, because we don't have the money. And I am so, on board with Mrs. Golston. It's about the future. Everything that happened before, I can't speak to that. But right now, what our children need and what our teachers need is for us to look forward. And I just hope and pray that this is something that, our districts around the entire, Gary will really, really think about when they go into that ballot box.
So there's a question in the chat, but I just want to say this as well. So like you, Principal Kinsey, I did go to Banneker as well as Tolliston and Westside. I was a part of the Gifted and Talented program in all of those schools, but I went to Williams too. I started there, okay? But when I think about the extracurricular activity, I really feel like that was creating life skills. And I think that is important for life skills to be incorporated into the overall curriculum of today's student, right? I think with the difference in terms of what they deal with compared to my generation and our generations, it is night and day. So anything that you can help to develop the leadership, like for example, and develop a sense of responsibility. At Banneker now, the class that we took on lunch hour was Latin, right? But it was the responsibility to show up and perform on lunch hour for Latin. Crazy. I don't know if that even still exists within the school system. We also took violin on lunch hour, but it was exciting, and it was, having that responsibility as a young student that kind of led you to understand what responsibility is and to show up for it as well. So I agree with that, and I understand it. One of the questions that we have on Facebook is questioning, I guess, the involvement related to the PTA. So is there a current PTA? If so, this question is more so geared towards them being able to utilize their network to solicit extra funds, I guess, to support those extracurricular activities. I have a response for that, but I want to leave it to the experts, as you all deal day to day with the parents and students. So can you kind of give some feedback to that inquiry? So the question is, what about the PTA? Are they involved? Are they doing anything to help solicit support, specifically only speaking to the extracurricular activities that this referendum will help support as well? And is it enough? I mean, is it whatever the parents can do, is it enough? So I have an opinion about that, but I'm gonna let you guys go first. I'm gonna give it to you, Principal.
So I would say, that we can always use more parent support. Right now at Beveridge, we are, one of our targets, one of our pillars with social emotional learning is really getting a robust, parent organization off the ground. And so we have at each school a parent or family liaison. And so we're working, in concert with that individual at our school to really grow our parent and teacher organization. But it's a task, it's a heavy lift to get our parents, especially with COVID going on. It's really hard to make those connections, which are those relationships that everybody's talking about. But we're working on it, and we're hoping that eventually, once we get past this area where we can't really get together like we want to, that we can really kind of grow that organization. Because I do feel like that's one of the ways that we can really get things off of the ground, if we get our parents to buy in. But I will say, I do think that even though virtual learning does seem to kind of pull us apart, it's, a lot of parents that I had not spoken to before, I've spoken to them several times. I've done a home visit. And so even though it does seem a little disconnected, there are relationships being built, and the hope is to build off of that after this virus has left us and we come back into the traditional setting.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else want to address that question or topic?
Well, we are just in the beginning of forming our PTA. This is my second year as principal at Williams, and I am really just excited. I love communicating. That's one of the perks of being a principal. You get to deal with the students, but also connecting with families. I love it so much. Like Ms. Kinsey said, making home visits. I get to Skype into the classrooms, and we call our parents the co-pilots because they're right there helping with that virtual learning. So it's been as challenging as it has been. It's still, we've seen some bright spots with parents being ultra focused on what is happening in the school. So we are starting our PTA. If I have any Williams families out there, you can reach out to me because we are just getting it on the ground right now. So yes.
Well, I will give Ty's touch, as I like to call it, to that particular question or concern. I think that one thing that I feel that we have a need to fix is a sense of community. So even though that question is geared towards PTA, in the communities that I have lived in outside of Gary, the PTA does not only involve those members who have kids at schools, okay? And usually it is one particular school within that community, so it's even easier to get connected to what's happening. They utilize the network of the community to do what's needed for the kids. And so it should not be on one entity. And I think that within our city, we lack the feel of community. It's different silos, right? The council, how often does the council engage with the Gary Community School Corporation? How often does those two entities engage as it relates to our students with the administration? I think that there's disconnects. And I see the referendum as an opportunity to address those disconnects. This is one opportunity for the community to show up on one accord and say, okay, as Principal Golston said, this is a question about our future. I like to say that this is also an opportunity of hope. If you have hope in your community, if you have hope in the staff and the teachers who are teaching your students, your children, right? This is an opportunity for you to say, okay, I support you. I'm not a part of the PTA, but I support you. You've got my buy-in to help address funding for extracurricular activities, supporting you as a teacher to help your salary increase so that you are feeling wanted and welcome in my community. So I want you to stay here and engage within our students, right? So I'm hopeful for that opportunity of improvement. So I am launching the Choose Hope program in support of this particular referendum starting tomorrow. It will be a social media push. And within the 4th district, we will be yelling, yes, we choose hope. We vote yes, we choose hope. So that is my way of looking at it. So when Principal Golston said, you know, on the ballot is the future, I'm like, yes, that's it. So not saying that, you know, the PTA is not involved, but I think there's struggles there. Again, I'm not a parent. I don't want it to seem as though I'm coming from that area, but what I do see is the lack of community. And I do know that the parents who are involved, I think it's a small group that's trying to do a lot. And so this is an opportunity for the outside community to come in and support the PTA as well as existing infrastructure that's already there for these students, right? So to that comment on social media, I just wanted to kind of give my insight as a community leader as well.
Councilman Atkins, you are absolutely correct. We do need that community involvement, that parental involvement, and we need to reach out to the community and parents to say, come on in, you know, be a part of our district, be a part of our school system. You are important to us, your children are important to us, and we want you to get involved because the kids are looking for those social outlets. And right now, we don't have a lot of outlets to offer
But I'm
them.
on another Zoom call, so let me call you back.
Their social emotional
Okay.
is not being attended to because they don't have that outlet. They go to school, they do work, but they don't have those extracurriculars, like you said, to give them other things to do, like play the violin. I mean, our kids deserve the same things the kids down the street get. So we really want to get those students, parents, and the community involved in all of those wonderful things that we can offer as a school district.
So perfect. And of course, we're aligned, but I also want to play devil's advocate. Okay. So there was some concerns, and not even concerns, I guess statements that I think that if we have an opportunity to address it, if you don't feel you know, in the appropriate manner to address these concerns, and that's fine. We can do it in our October 2nd meeting for the community. So I'm not well versed on this, but I believe in 2018, there was also a referendum attempt to support the Gary Community School Corporation. And this is pre-Senate Bill, I think it's Senate Bill, House Bill 1065, pre all of that, right? And so a lot of the feedback that I've heard from current advisory board members, is the appropriate term, from the school board, is that they are not in support of this referendum. And one of the main focus it was because of there being a lack of plan. And then also they make reference to the 2018, that I think that actually failed. So if anyone who is versed on that, if you can kind of give an assessment in terms of what was the question, or a summary of the question in 2018 in terms of what was the ask, and then the difference between that and then now.
I'm not quite sure what the question was, but we did go after a referendum in 2018, and we had a group of people supporting that referendum at that time, but we came in pretty late to start pushing the referendum. I want to say it might have been late October, late September, that we actually start going out trying to share the information with the public. So we almost made it, but we lost by a small number. This time we have gotten out early, gotten information out. We've created a plan for what we're going to do with the funds. And so I think we have a better chance now because we have sat down and made a plan as to why we need the referendum, what we need the referendum for, how the funds are going to be spent. When the last time we did it, the plan, I can't say there wasn't a plan, but we didn't take a lot of time to communicate what that plan was to the community.
Does anybody else want to chime in on that? We're good. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hey, Miss Carter, how are you?
Hello. How are you all? So I just want to say this is MGT that is really in control of everything. Yes, Dr. Page is kind of like the face of MGT, but it's still MGT that really has the last say so as it pertains to how the money is going to be spent. And I want to also say MGT has never been transparent. And so it's hard to trust that suddenly they're going to be transparent if they've never been. There's no history of them giving the information willingly to the advisory board, of which I am a part of. Also, I know Dr. Page has said that the money will not be shared with the charter schools. However, there's the bill 1065 suggests that we would have to share money with the charter schools. And even though she's saying, no, we won't, she is not the last say so on what happens as far as that goes. MGT is in Eric Parish. They are the ones who actually have the last say concerning that. And we need to remember that.
Sure. So I think one statement that you said was inside of Senate Bill 1065, it states that funding will be allocated directly to Garrett Community School Corporation and not charter schools. So just as a legislator, I would like to say that's law. So if it is written as such, it will be as such, unless a lawsuit could actually instill of that. So any misperception, now I'll say misperception because it's written, in law, that funding will specifically go towards Garrett Community School Corporation. I think that might be misinterpreted. I also would like to say in response to that, now again, I'm not Eric Parish, Eric or Kevin Parish, those individuals from MGT, I'm not versed on the historic relevance in terms of how they were in the past, et cetera. But I can speak specifically related to this and the plan and the referendum. So from my interpretation, which was given based off commentary from Dr. Page, not only in the public meeting at the Gary Common Council, but also at, I believe, 2 committee meetings that we have had, which also included Dr. Vernon Smith, who was also in attendance, who addressed some of those concerns. And again, I could get some of this information for you after this call, Ms. Carter. And also on October the 2nd, I will be inviting Dr. Vernon Smith to come, because one of the things he did show us was the actual records from MGT. And he showed us the digression in terms of the debt that had been paid, because I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, one of the concerns that the advisory board as a body might have had was they have been said, there was hearsay saying that there had been debt paying down. And I think there was confusion in terms of what that balance should be today versus, what they have shown. And the actual record that Dr. Smith pulled up that he received from MGT, it did in fact show strong progression in terms of that debt, if you will, being paid down. I do know that I
received from MGT.
I believe, do not quote me, but he had, I want to say.
No, I saw it. I saw the documentation. But if you go to Gateway, it still shows that it's more than 79,000. I don't know I don't know where MGT pulled that information, but when you go to Gateway yourself and you look at the debt, it still shows an excessive amount.
I think, okay, I'll note that, but I think that we should also understand the frequency that Gateway is updated. I don't think it's updated day to day. I think it might be a different reporting structure. And then I could actually, go back to Dr. Smith as well to confirm if in fact is, when that update will be reflected. because I would think that he wouldn't have showed any information unless it was, you know, adequate and accurate, if you will, related to the council on that.
You are correct, Councilwoman Ty Atkins. Also, our annual debt has gone from 22 million to 6 million. So we are headed in the right direction. And the referendum is only going to help the kids of Gary. And so that we can get that budget balanced.
And also, Ms. Carter, I did ask the question because Ms. Carter is a resident of the 4th District. So I did want to let her know, I did ask the question to Dr. Paige McNulty in our, probably, I think it was the committee meeting, just to confirm the funding for the referendum only, and I'm only speaking about that, if that will be used for payment of debt. And so the response was no. You know, the referendum itself is operational to help with those elements under the operational budget, not to be deviated towards the debt. I believe for I think it's called the common loan. It might be wrong, Christian. I tried to look at
Common school loan.
Yes, okay. I tried to pull the records earlier today, y'all. So, you know, that was a concern of mine in terms of, you know, just assessing my support level, making sure that community members are you're asking for support, but it's actually going to infrastructure, it's going to improve the livelihood of the student and not, in a sense, debt that was accumulated, you know what I mean, not for support of them. And so that was a push for me, understanding that. And once I got confirmation, I felt extremely comfortable with proceeding in support of the referendum. So I will take those additional concerns and make sure that we address those. And like I said, Dr. McNulty, will be at our community meeting, which will be the last one for the year on October the 2nd. And that's a Friday, and it will take place at the Railcats. So the Railcats will be hosting us that day.
Councilwoman Atkins, if I can just verify, as you said, the referendum is operational. House Bill 1065 is separate from the referendum.
Right.
So just wanted to make that clear that those are two different entities.
Two different entities, and they also address two different paths in terms of what's needed to get this community system back in reconciliation efforts, right? Back in good standing.
1065 is capital improvement. So roofs, boilers, that's what 1065 covers.
And if I'm not mistaken, I know one of the concerns the community had was the existing real estate that is on the books for Gary Community School Corporation, the vacant buildings, and what's the plan for that? Making sure that they are not as accessible. You know, we had an incident last year, I believe, at Norton School that you know, is a strong concern within this community. Not only the buildings, but, you know, from a city perspective, we also have the blight in the homes that are also unsafe. So that was a strong concern in terms of what avenue will be taken to address that. Dr. Paige did address it. I believe the funding from 1065 will help address the what's the word I'm searching for? It wasn't to address like the disperse of those vacant buildings, but I think it was to help secure them. And I know that those buildings are still available for sale and that they have a strong initiative for identifying ample and responsible, which is the key word as well, buyers for those particular properties. And I know the first attempt, someone asked like, well, wasn't it, RFQ open a couple of months ago or sometime last year related to those properties? And it was. And the reason why you probably have not seen a lot of action related to that is because those were not viable bids. And viable meaning realistic, just to keep it real. You know, those bids was coming in at $5, $1,000 for buildings whose assessed value is a lot higher. And again, we do want to make sure that those are secure. And that's something that, within my district specifically, I'll make sure that we stay aligned in terms of what's happening with that. And I believe the funding that is allocated under the 1065 bill will help support that particular initiative. And if I'm wrong, ladies, let me know. because that is a major piece, you know, in terms of what has not been done, you know, and what will be done. I would say this too, and the last thing that I want to take, because it's already 7 o'clock. I know I started late, but a last piece I wanted to talk about is plan. But I would say this before we get into plan. As a community, we have to stop looking at the past. We have to have confidence in the leaders that are in position to lead. Now, the school system is different now, but you have legislators who have supported these various bills at the state level who you can hold accountable to ensure that they are working with Dr. Page and Community School Corporation and getting the insight that's needed and understanding what is done after this is, you know, passed. You have community members that have a duty to you as a citizen that you voted for. Even if you didn't vote for, they represent you, okay? To ensure that they are giving you feedback. And if that's you requesting them having their own community forum, they should be able to do that. If your state legislators are partnering with your city legislators, because myself and some of my other colleagues, that we do have frequent events, please make sure that you are suggesting that and making sure that it's happening. You have to make sure that you hold your community leaders accountable, period. So I want to stress that. I know the situation with Garrett Community Schools Corporation is a little bit sticky because of the MGT involvement, because of DUAB, right? Because of Indiana State Board of Education. I get that, but you also, again, has your state legislature who should be advocating and have a direct line to those parties for your voice as well. The last piece I wanted to talk about for the next maybe 4 minutes is a plan. And this is a push. What's the plan? You know, what we talking about doing this, that, and the third, but what is the plan? Because a lack of planning, we can have all the money in the world, but if you're not planning efficiently, it won't go far, if you say, right? So I would say that I know in commentary earlier in this conversation, Ms. Hobson mentioned, and I think I did, and she kind of chimed in terms of the plan, the path forward plan. So as it stands right now, the way that you can assess that, and this is becoming informed, people, you can assess that by going to the Garrett Community School Corporation website and downloading it. I believe there is a direct header that says like the plan, you know, to move forward. And once you select that, there's an ability to download it. It's not long, it's only about 7 or 6 pages. And within that, there are the 4 pillars that Ms. Hobson mentioned.
You're talking about the path forward?
Correct.
The path forward.
Yes, the path forward. And so within that, it talks about engagement. It talks about, Kirstel, help me on that. It's engagement. It is
Yes, you're correct. First and foremost, academics. There's an academic plan included in there. And it also talks about how can we tell that it's working. So all of that is included there as well, an assessment piece. And we will be reporting quarterly on our progress of the plan. Academics, engagement, fiscal, as well as operations are the 4
So one of the things that I did read the plan, and I did bring up this question. This is for my community members to the leadership. It's more of an overview at this point in time. And there are specific objectives under each pillar in terms of these are the targets, this is where we're trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience, to have an effective plan in terms of being able to measure the effectiveness, you need to have SMART goals. You need to be able to define, for example, one of them under academics, it states that one of the objectives is to increase the 5-year graduation rate. So increase it what? Increase it 10% over the 5 years to increase it. So I did get confirmation for each one of the pillars, each of the objectives under the pillars, that the team will be formulating SMART goals to assess. And within the next, I believe, 30 to 60 days, that information will be provided for the community as it will be updated as well. So that was a big piece of my insight. I think it's great to have an overview and objectives, but for us to be diligent in creating new, working towards a better future, choosing hope and being able to assess that hope, we have to have measurable goals under those objectives. So those will be instated for the Garrett Community School Corporation. All right, it is 4 minutes after the hour, and I don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to give our representatives an opportunity. If I can have one from the leadership, either Ms. Henderson or Ms. Hobson, to give your lasting thoughts, and then also one of my principals to give your lasting thoughts as a plea to the community.
Okay, I'll start. On November 3rd, the citizens of Gary will have an opportunity to say yes to the kids of Gary. And you have that opportunity to say yes by voting yes to the referendum. When voting occurs, the question will be last on the ballot. So if you just choose straight Democratic or straight Republican, you won't see the question. So you'll actually have to go through the ballot and it'll be the last question. And I want to read, if you don't mind, just a second, Councilwoman Ty, what the actual question will say.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
the actual verbiage of the question will say, for the 8 calendar years immediately following the holding of the referendum, shall the Gary Community School Corporation impose a property tax rate that does not exceed 56 cents on each $100 of assessed valuation that is in addition to all other property taxes imposed by the school corporation for the purpose of funding teachers, instructional staff, student preschool, athletics, and extracurricular activities, student safety, and assisting with balancing the budget. Vote yes.
Very good. Thank you so much. Real quick to that point, my seniors, I didn't go in detail related to that because they get on me about having social media stuff. They say they don't do that. So I was going to go in detail about the effect to my seniors in our October the 2nd session. It will be minimum to none if you are a senior and you have exemptions. So there is a way for you to check that out. Actually, we'll do a robocall and give you guys that information and how you can go online. Or if you need my help as a senior, I would do that for you. And we can walk through it to kind of give you an idea in terms of what impact, if any, will be affected towards you as a paying property tax citizen within this community. Okay, I'm going to let all principals go ahead. I hope you all don't mind.
Councilwoman, can I just add something?
Sure, absolutely.
I know that a lot of people are frustrated with MGT, and another contract has been signed for 2 years with MGT. But I want the community to think about this. So MGT has 2 more years with the district, and then community control is supposed to be given back. So if the control is given back in 2 years and there is no money, who is going to want to take over the helm of the school district that has no funds for it? So we gotta get things back together so we can get it back as a community. And as a community, do we want it back at 0 where we have to build it from the ground up? Or do we want to have something to work with when we get the district back so we can move forward and provide the things that our students need and our community actually need?
Thank you for sharing that. Principal Golston?
Thank you for this opportunity. If I could just speak candidly, I've been an educator in the Gary schools for over 20 years. I have seen the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of everything, and I've still remained here. I choose to be here. This is where I was educated. I was raised in Gary. This is, as I've said before, my education here changed the trajectory of my life. And as an educator, I've seen my teachers, they invest their time, they invest their talent, they invest their treasure as well. And I just think this is an opportunity for the citizens of Gary to do the same. We talked about community. We need people to come into the schools. We need time. We need talent. And we also have an opportunity to invest our treasure in our future. It's the future that's going to continue to hold up this city and make it become the bright symbol that it it once was. I've seen it. I was a gifted and talented teacher. I was a regular ed teacher. I taught all kinds of students. And as I said before, I choose to stay here. I choose to be an administrator in Gary. I was a teacher for over 20 years. So again, it's about an investment. And this is a great opportunity that we have right now, November 3rd.
Very good. I'm going to go in order as I see you. So Principal Bradley.
I'm going to be brief because I have people working in my house and the noise is crazy. But I agree totally with Golston. The children are our future. I see this as investing in our future. And although I've been in education over 20 years, I've been in and out of Gary. And every time I come back, people say, why do you come back? And I say, because it's home. This is my home. This is where I was raised. This is where I went to school. So I come back to share my gifts and whatever I have with the students that I work for. So I'm fully invested, and I just encourage everybody to please vote yes so we can build up our communities and have them look the way they did many years ago.
Thank you for that. Principal Kinsey.
So I probably won't say anything that hasn't already been said, but I really feel like it is an opportunity to rebuild the village. Our students and our teachers are facing, and just like the community is facing, some things that they have never ever faced before. And so it's going to take us to do something that we've never done before. And social emotional learning is something that a lot of people, that's new to a lot of us. But in order for our students to really, really reach the heights that we want them to reach, we have to invest the resources in the village. And so that means, reading, writing, math, test scores are very, very important. But if we don't take care of making sure that they feel safe, they feel supported, and that the day is the students and those parents. And with this referendum, I think we can make the investments to make that happen. We do it every day, scraping by with nothing. And so if we were to be blessed with the community to really, really, give us this chance, I think they will see the fruits of their investment very, very soon. And so I encourage you all to vote yes. And I hope to have an opportunity to talk to you again before you make that choice, just to implore you again, rebuild the village.
Thank you for that. So this is my last thought. Our city has been in a state of emergency for far too long, true state of emergency. And there is no real prospect for growth, even outside of thinking about education itself. When you want the city to progress, there is no economic development without a strong education system and public safety. And so this is a big piece of that equation. So the time for our community to stand up, come together, and to work to save our school district is now. This is the opportunity to start community, to work together to improve the lives of our children. So that is why I am choosing yes to support the referendum, and also choosing yes to support our future. So the hope for Gary, it really stands with this. This is a start. This is a part of that equation. So as I said earlier in conversation, I hope that you stand in solidarity with me to choose hope and vote yes November 3rd. I do, like for my community members to trust me as your leader and know that I do as best as I can to get well versed before I take a stance on something, so that you can feel committed in my integrity in terms of my stance. But I also want to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions and fulfill any feelings of doubt that you might have. So I'm going to invite you all to join me on October the 2nd, where we will bring in some of those state legislators who have that direct connection. It can kind of give us some insight on what could be perceived as the failure of leadership with MGT within our community. And we can also you can get more confidence for your understanding in terms of how we will manage that relationship going forward to ensure the integrity of those funds will be used for our children. I have no doubt. I definitely, stand in alignment with these leaders who are on the call with me today. Especially, I could speak to Ms. Hobson. I've known her for a number of years and trust that, she is not only doing what's best for this community, but also for all students within the Garrett Community School Corporation, as well as the other members of the team as well. So again, please join me on October 2nd. Like I said, we will talk about the what if, because one thing that we did not talk about today is what if this does not pass? What would that look like for this community? What would that look like for our children? So I want to dig in deeper on that part, October the 2nd, and I'll bring food as well in case we go a little bit longer. So we'll have refreshments served. And like I said, the Railcast organization is hosting us. And so you would park off the 5th and Virginia street lots, and you actually go in the back area where I believe the old Diamond Center was located. We will have it on the stage in that big space to practice social distancing. Up until that point, feel free to email me any questions or concerns for consideration for that event. My email address is tatkins, it's ADKINS, @gary.gov. And I'll be sure to include that in our discussion panel on the 2nd. All right, thank you, everybody. I want to thank each and one of the members of the Garrett Community School Corporation for joining me this evening. Definitely want to thank Ms. Carter, who is a representative on the Garrett School Advisory Board. I believe it's the right way to say it now,
Yes.
right? So thank you so much for joining as well. And I hope to address some of your concerns on October 2nd. So I hope you can come to that event. And also, again, all members of the community who tuned in via Facebook Live or with us today on the Zoom directly. Thank you and have a good evening. Take care.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.